You in-depth analysis of national current affairs. Freshly pressed on Smooth 98.1.
Love music, love life. You are listening to Freshly Pressed on Smooth 90.1, and it's now time for us to have the detailed review of the headlines from different dailies right here in Nigeria. My name is Oluwaseun, and you are welcome. To be a part of this show, two ways. One, you can go to YouTube where we're currently live at Smooth 981 FM Lagos. At Smooth 981 FM Lagos. You also can drop your chats, your comments using the live chat option, or you can come to WhatsApp 0911 999 0981. Again, 0911 999 0981. To join us doing the analysis this morning is Chibuzor. Good morning.
Good morning, Lagos. Good morning, Oluwaseun. Nice to be here once again.
Let's dive right into what we have to discuss this morning on Freshly Pressed, starting with the one that is coming from the Group Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, Bayo Ojulari, who said that sophisticated international syndicates are behind threats to Nigeria's energy infrastructure.
Okay, the NNPC boss was making the statement at a gathering of I think it was military heads. What was the maiden or the opening of the opening of the maiden African Chiefs of Defense Staff Summit in Abuja. So I think I got a brief few moments of this the other day where you had all the well-dressed, well-dressed military heads in their nice uniform and all their epaulets and everything, all their official wear, everything dangling. And there was a flurry of speeches, important information that being dropped. And we took the opportunity there to talk about how Nigeria had the cooperation within Nigeria, the military, and the military had led to increase the production to increase production and capacity production by NNPC. And he basically pointed the finger at a lot of international players and syndicates who, for partly being responsible for the previous drops in production levels. So I don't think it's news to any Nigerian that over the years, we've had these various pieces of information, typically by NNPC at some point, where they come and broadcast and tell us how many thousands of barrels or hundreds of thousands of barrels of oil have been stolen from Nigerians, and now the equivalent billions of dollars or billions of naira are not finding their ways into our national coffers because of fuel theft or oil theft, and how, and from time to time we would see pictures or videos of some particular people being apprehended, barges stopped with stolen crude and all that. And what he's trying to tell us is that yes, it's gotten better, that they're doing a lot more, obviously, and I expect that to come from him since his organization is in charge of it. And he's basically giving Nigerians that things are going to get better, that we are seeing a lot. But yes, I think the point he's making is that he's made is very clear. It's not news. It's not news. It's this is international business. The oil business is international business, so there will always be international players who are interested in playing in that space, and some of them are not going to go above. They're not good. Their deals are not above the table. So what we need to do, like any other person who's involved in this kind of business, is take the necessary steps. A lot of our security efforts when it comes to our oil pipelines and protecting our various channels for oil exploration today are physical, and are dependent on either having operatives or individuals either keeping an eye on it or intelligence networks. I think at some point, and I do hope and I believe that it's already happening at some point, that we're using more modern tools. We have sensors and we have things that tells us when
there are breaks in our various pipelines. These things are being actively monitored, which I believe already should be happening, already happens. And there are points of contact to actually sort out these issues. Like you said, things are good. And Nigerians can only tell that things are good when we're meeting up with our oil quotas, when we're hearing less of the stories of oil theft, and we actually know that less of that happens, when we actually see the value that comes from that oil production coming to touch our table. So, we keep us a good eye. We also know that, in their battle to keep everything safe, they also had strategic partners like Antita and other, in addition to the military that have been supporting them. And it's, Nigeria's an interesting place to say. Let me keep it at that.
You can join the conversation by sending your messages to 0911 999 0981. Moving on to the next story, coming from The Punch. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has signed a landmark bilateral air service agreement with Brazil, signaling the establishment of direct air links between Nigeria and what they call South America's largest economy.
Okay, good news. When I was reading this story, I was just thinking about Mr. C and the usual back and forth on the deliverables of the president's foreign trips of his junketing, and at least the president can hold up this one. And yeah, okay, we signed up this agreement with Brazil. Yeah, but on one side it's good. On the paper, it's good. Nigeria is one of the biggest economies in Africa. Brazil, without a doubt, is the biggest economy in South America. So having direct flights between both countries is a good way to go. I think also having those direct flights, what can you do with those direct flights? There's always the idea of tourism. Brazil has been known as an international tourism hub for years. People want to go to Rio de Janeiro, people want to go to the beaches of Brazil, people want to go, maybe those who are wildlife, who are environmentalists probably want to go towards the forests and see how, what Brazil has to offer. But interestingly, too, Nigeria has these same things on the other side. I think the only thing is that from where we are, we're less, at this point, a bit less developed than where Brazil is in terms of active, I'm not active, concerted efforts to actually put these things together into a single narrative and making Nigeria presentable. And the truth is that, we can talk about this. I'm one that's also talk about all the security problems of Nigeria when it comes to tourism. But Brazil also has a lot of its own security issues, but they are less magnified because we see some active attempts to manage some of those things. So for all it offers on the table, it looks like a very great deal. I hope that we're able to meet our own quota of this part of this deal and we're able to have our people go down the trade primarily, that this direct flights will bring up a lot more trade channels, a lot more opportunities for Brazilians to come in and spend money in Nigeria, take advantage of what we also have to offer as a country, and that the deal will not just bring a one-directional movement from Nigerians going to Brazil, but we also see a lot coming the other way around. But also speaking to that, I think also one of the things is that we also need to be ready for these things when they come in our way. How are we trying to make sure that we take advantage of these things? So it's a concerted effort. It's, like I like to say, systems thinking. You're opening up these trade routes, you're opening up these flight routes, but what are you doing, to sort out the other issues that make these things work? And I think one other thing at the back of my mind at the end of the day is that while it's good for us to be linking Africa, I guess Africa's one of Africa's biggest economies, one of South America's biggest economies. I think one other thing that is close to my heart as a person is when you look at the cost to even go within Africa. And I do hope at some point that the president actually turns his direction to see, how do I work with my other African leaders to have this kind of deals within the continent and make traveling not just cheaper, but easier, more profitable, and by extension, drive proper trade. Because I think a lot of our trade deals, even within the continent, have failed or are stagnated or still remain informal because of a lot of the channels that are being built are not formalized yet. They're still largely informal. So it's hard to put a finger on some of what is happening within the economies of these countries. So yes, it's a good deal it's a good deal as much as we can see it. Like I said, I do hope we make the best out of it. We're in the position of prepared to make the best out of it as a country.
Very valid point you mentioned, establishing trade within Africa and flights within Africa, because by now you would think that we'll be flying high on the wheels of AFCTFA, I think. And you just look at the cost of traveling within Africa and it's just insane. It makes no sense. It's as if we're enemies of each other, which the charity they say should begin at home. So we could use that.
Yeah, that's my hope that one day, it will be easier for me to take a flight out to Cote d'Ivoire or Yamoussoukro or Abidjan, instead of having to take a tour around the world before I land there. Wait for a flight that goes once a week or through multiple points. I think that's one thing that we need to look a lot inward into Africa. And it's not about the talk. It's about how do we put these actions on ground. So yeah, at least we can hopefully we can get some ROI out of the jet fuel, the cost of moving that jet around the world. So good point for this.
Otegbade David says, Good morning, Smooth FM. NNPC boss saying the obvious. Let him tell us what plans or effort he's putting in place to stop the obvious. To stop the international syndicates.
Uh, that's a longer story. And unfortunately, everything in that space actually sits within his remit or within his control.
Lexi from Surulere says it's credit to the president's Tinubu's administration that they brought oil thefts down drastically all into the year. A menace that has been on for over 40 years. The administration is showing its capacity in tackling issues and getting results. Good one, Mr. President. Mr. Ajayi Oloniloa from Magodo Sherry says, Good morning. It's ridiculous to hear another lamentation from the NNPCL's chief executive that certain syndicates are behind the continued theft of our oil resources, just like the CDC is referring on the inability of the military to deal with insurgency for the same reason. Those charged with the task of managing various issues should either perform or show the way out if they're incapable. Moving on to Nigeria introducing data exchange platform to end repeated data submissions by citizens. This should be good news, I believe.
So what is the story talking about? So we've all had in the last few years, most of us have had to experience going, if you've tried to probably get a bank account, get a passport, and even pay for some services today that have to do with the federal government or the government agencies. You are typically prompted to give the same set of information that you had given when you had registered for your national ID card. For some of us who have gone to the same registration, we've gone through that process, although we also went through similar processes in giving out information. What we're hearing from the agency called the Nigerian Data Exchange Platform, the boss of the Nigerian Data Exchange Platform, is that that those days are gone. That so basically what he's saying that they basically put in the data exchange basically in its function is that you instead of having to submit that individual data to these various points, you have a central point that actually holds up to that data and orchestrates. Sorry, I'm going to try and use very basic grammar. Ensures that every of these MDs would get that information without you having to repeat that process. So basically what you would have to give out is, and it's one of the things in terms of data management, and there's also NDPR, and which is the Nigerian Data Protection Laws, about having to hold data that you don't necessarily need to hold on to, and the way data is being managed, the cost of individual data is being managed. What they are proposing, or what we expect that will happen, is that when you go into any of these agencies or NDAs or places where you normally would have to give out all this data fresh, what you'd have to give is some form of identification that allows your data to be exchanged via the Nigerian Data Exchange to the various partners that are requiring. So if you want to get your passport, for instance, you don't have to give all the same information that they're giving when you are registering your SIM card with name. That once you provide some level of anonymized information, they will be able to look up your data and transfer it to the passport authorities and whatever authority requires it. So that is what they are trying to do to actually make it more convenient for you to go through these processes. It's a very good idea. It's a very noble. Like I know that even at some point when you were doing your national identification, they moved from actually, they went where they were giving like pseudo ID numbers instead of having, so you wouldn't have to share your ID number everywhere you went to. And it's one of those things that protects your data because going into the world that we are with all the improvements and all the technological improvements in the world today, one of the biggest exposures an individual can have is misuse of their personal data. So if you've done it in the world of technology, you know the various things that you will be exposed to if somebody is able to get your data and able to present is able to get enough data to be able to present themselves as you, they have access to things that you normally have access to. And those are the risks that we have as we move into a more digitized world and a world that is more dependent on identification and information about the individual. So this is something that will help not just ease our stress at those points, but possibly protect us a bit better.
Mm.
So I think Nigerians are just waiting to see how this will be rolled out and how this would work practically, when they walk into those shops or walk into those offices, how we are going to, because already there are, if you look into some of these processes, there are infrastructural challenges that delay some of these things. So for instance, there used to be times where you could not do SIM registration for this because there was some problem
Network.
with
Yes.
INC, for instance. You could go to passport offices 5 times a day and say, hey, our connection to this place is down, so you cannot go past this process. So I do hope as we make things easier, we're putting additional points of contact, because this is another point that would come into that process, and another point of integration that comes into that process. I do hope that the underlying infrastructure and underlying connectivity is also improved such that it remains as seamless as it's supposed to be.
I think the point you mentioned is very important because it takes me back to the conversation we had on Lagos Talks last week about the tinted permits for vehicles, how you tell people to go get it because the deadline is approaching. If not that, they have to extend it.
Yeah.
And the entire process is as stressful as you can imagine, because I don't think we understand in Nigeria the concept of demand and supply, that if you make publicity about something, there has to be commensurate demand. If not, it's going to be double the stress. So if we're going to do this, I hope that you're not going to give us the mother of all stress in doing this.
Yeah, because there are some processes that when you think through the process, you imagine how simple that process can be on paper. But you walk in and when you start the process, you just realize this is Nigeria. Like almost every process is built to test your humanity. So
your virtues, your patience, everything that you call your values.
so that's where we need to move away from. We need to actually make our processes not just automated, as we like to say, or we want to digitize it, but we also need to design these processes with the customer in view at the end of the day, that we want to make it easy enough for the customer to be able to do this, to be able to get this public service, to be able to make this payment, to be able to get this thing sorted out without having to go through hoops and chains to be able to sort out the same problem.
Yeah, it would be great to prove people wrong who say that. Sometimes it feels like some people in government just wake up and say, how can we stress Nigerians today? Because it really does feel like that many times.
Yeah.
Moving on to the vanguard, the federal government has unveiled a teacher ethics and criminal record verification framework, making it mandatory for all teachers in public and private schools to undergo ethics screening and criminal background check for employment.
Okay. Two things. So I'm beginning to have an issue with this particular minister because I think he's always quick to put the cart before the horse. I don't think maybe I might be. I don't want to sound disrespectful to him, but I do think at times he probably doesn't have a full scope of the problem he's trying to solve when he tries to solve it. But hey, let him give it a go. So on the surface, having teachers at all levels go through criminal and ethics and criminal, he says it's teacher ethics and criminal record verification framework. Now, to start with, any employer, any employer who chooses to employ somebody with a criminal record basically has exposed himself to some liability. Now, I don't want to go into the up and down of which kind of criminal record person has, what kind of crime person has committed, because in Nigeria you could have a lot of things. If we actually went full scale into that, a lot of us will have a lot of interesting records to show around. But every employer that has that basically puts us some liability. So I do expect that everybody who employs someone would have gone through that level, so at least a basic criminal check. How you do it is a different thing, because today in Nigeria, having people's data, even be able to go and say, you know what, I want you to check. I want to go to a central place where I can see someone's criminal records, which is why you have stories of people jumping Lagos and ending up somewhere else in the country and running a business or doing something while they have while they're involved in some crime, is what we hear a lot about. If we have that information centralized somewhere where somebody can check, most times what we do is that we take them to some senior police person, who sits down in an office, puts the fear of God into them, makes them to sign an undertaking, and wow, they are good. Do we have a coordinated system that allows us to do that verification? And what are we looking out for? When we talk about teacher ethics, teaching is supposed to be a profession where not just anybody comes in and says, I am going to teach, and it's not professionally. Now, I do know in a lot of private schools, and unfortunately, we have an entire range of private schools, from the professional private schools to the mushroom and anti-doing and me, or whatever. Person just sets up a room and says, but there's actually a framework for governing the setup of this entity. Now, when you want to teach, you're supposed to go through some teaching programs. Is teaching ethics built into those programs? And I believe they are. My mom was a teacher for many, many years. So I think it's to go back and look into those programs and ensure that people go through those programs, even if you have come in from another background and have to teach within the shortest possible time. You should be pushed to at least go into one of those programs, even as a remedial, to make sure that you don't just have a degree in English, but you're able to teach English language if that's what you're going to be made to teach. And that should be part of the program if it's not already part of it. So it's also thinking about, how do you want to do this, making some of these proclamations and making them sound good on TV, sound good on radio, sound good when you're talking. But when you say, you're going to an ethics training, a lot of us work in the private sector. We do ethics trainings from time to time. It's part of our annual compliance. So you do it, you tick the box, and you move on. The question is that, have you created an environment where that teacher would act ethically throughout? Is the teacher guaranteed of getting paid properly? Is the teacher guaranteed of working in an environment where that is inspiring, not just for him, but also for the students to learn? When the teacher walks out of that school, is the teacher able to live a life? Even if he needs to get a second job, can he get a second job and treat it with dignity? So those are the things that ethics are not isolated from the environment. In Nigeria, we make it look like, when the individual, like, it's either you have something or you don't have something. I agree to a large extent with it, but guess what? Nigeria will test you. So bringing all those programs and those nice things that our politicians like to throw around. It's also good to think about, how do we make it possible for these people to live those lives that we want to live. And I think also, like last time when the same minister wanted to extend, he wanted to extend the successes of JAM to WAEC in terms of digitalizing the exams and having computer-based exams. I think also I think I was on the program when I also advised that he should do the same for elections. Also for his criminal background checks and his ethics text. I think she also extended to politicians. Every governor, every councillor, everybody also should go through the same test and same training. Because guess what? They are almost as important, if not more important, and hold places of more access and more power than these teachers that you are bothered about. So at the end of the day, I just want to close up. My problem is not what he has raised. It's the fact that you have to look at it and that some of this is already exists in the system. And what you need to do is actually understand what's in the system and either reframe them or strengthen these structures. You cannot build on sand.
It reminds me of somebody's comment yesterday on the locker room. I think the person said, you see Bruno Fernandez on the pitch and the actor as if he's working, he's doing something. When in actual fact,
Let's move on. I don't want to talk about I'm not talking about United. I am Emmanuel.
Oh wow, my condolences.
It's possible. Thank you very much.
Lagos state government has revealed that it is targeting an additional $1 billion and incomes through small and medium enterprises annually in 5 years. And this is following the graduation of 253 beneficiaries of the Lagos State Export Readiness Training Program.
So one thing, today I'm saying a lot of good things about government, and I don't refrain from saying when I see it. So one thing about Lagos State and having the opportunity to either have friends who work in some of these spaces or be part of programs that do some of these things that because of the nature of Lagos State, and I'm not so sure how it works in other states, where there's a lot of attention and attraction, and a lot of entities would come and partner with the state just because of where Lagos State is and the opportunities that arise within the state. You have a lot of these things happening, either being led by the state government and its various parastatals, but also being led by private entities that are working with the state government, right? And you've seen a lot more of them, which is good to see. So, I think it was some months ago, I was at one of these programs as part of my organization, my 9 to 5. And one of the things remarks we made was that we wish that there were multiples of these programs in the various local governments, just one isolated building or space, because they catered for kids who are trying to learn skills. They catered for people who are like trying to learn trades and businesses. And like what is being mentioned here, where you're building up SMEs, you're building up their capacity to actually do what they need to do, to be able to export, to be able to produce, to be able to make money, and able to consequentially, at the end of the day, being able to drive, make revenue for the state and for the country as a whole. So that's a very good plus. Like I said, it would be good if you had found a lot more of this, not just in Lagos State, but also around the federation. And I do feel that my thoughts are going back to education. Education shouldn't be just the formal education. There's a lot of emphasis on informal education, and that is where you build up some of the skills that are required for the SME. So while I praise Lagos State for this, I also ask Lagos State to look at some of the entities, some of the educational institutions that provide informal training skills. And a lot of them are actually in poor shape. So I do hope that at some point that there will be some change focus towards some of those entities, like I think there's one of the Bagada Expressway that I think it's supposed to. I remember my boss trying to get a table and we struggled to see where he could make a table. He had to import it, and it was sad for me because my boss is not from Nigeria, and I was like, this is bad. But I do hope that we continue doing a lot more of this. Another thing, and this is one of my pet peeves with Lagos State, is that today in Lagos, and because we're talking about business and setting up small businesses, if I choose to go into a small business today in Lagos, and I am hoping that one of our online listeners will come and correct me. I do not believe there's a central position or central space that tells when I go online, because we are in a world where everything is digital, where I can actually see and say, these are going to be the requirements that you need as a new business owner to set up a business in Lagos. Because those are things it's not about just thinking about how they would bring in foreigners. It's about making it easier for them to open businesses and run successful businesses. Not that when they set up a shop, they rent a shop somewhere, they're about to set up, somebody shows up with an entire booklet of things that they need to pay for.
True.
By the time they are done, the area boys in the neighborhood come and set up their own flag and say, auntie, you have not paid, so you cannot do. You have to pay this, pay that, pay security, pay your money. At this point, I should be able to go to somewhere in the Lagos State portal and see requirements to start a business for in Lagos. These are the things I need. And if either it's local government driven or the state driven, these are the permits I need. These are what I need to get ready for my tax payments when I start making profit or revenue. This is what I need to do and all that. It should be clearly spelled out so that we are not guessing the game, and it doesn't create the opportunity for any Tom, Dick, and Harry, or Olu, John, and Timmy to show up at my doorstep and say, you know what, you have not paid this, you have not paid Oba, you have not paid all this funny stuff. That is where we need to get to. That is where Lagos should be looking at itself as what's the nice word we always like saying about Lagos? Mega city. doing mega business, also driving the productivity and development, not just of the state, but also about the individuals that live in the state.
Thank you. Again, that point you mentioned is quite important. And like you said, I'm not aware of such. So it would be great if someone has an idea who can point us in the right direction, because I knew there was an importance of this when I got knowledge of a certain building. I was involved in some certain building. And in Lagos, when you're building, that's when you will understand
Tell me about it.
many things you have to pay. My word. And it keeps bringing up. So it will be great. I got to know some just because a content creator made a content about some levies and some documentations that you have to do. And I was shocked, up to 6 or 7, if not more. That's just for building. If you want to renovate, the same thing. And it would be good if we have such. Otherwise, it would feel like the government is setting a trap for you.
Yeah, because people tell you to go to Alausa. I'm like, we don't all need to stand up from our homes and go to Alausa, knock on some doors or door, because not just one door, move from door to door, trying to find out what we need to do. We keep talking about Lagos being forefront of development and progress in Nigeria. Let's walk the talk, Lagos State.
Thank you. I mean, we thank you for what you're doing, but yeah, let's make it even better. All right, let's take some final messages as we call it a day on Freshly Pressed. Otebody David says, intergovernment synergy is a big problem in Nigeria because it's all wrapped in politics and some agencies are not relevant. Says, good morning, everyone. Nice to hear this good news today. A seamless service is what we deserve, especially since we pay for it. Ethics ought to have been inculcated into teacher training from the onset. The teachers need to be motivated and encouraged to give their best with continuous training. The mandatory ethics and criminal screening should rather be done for all public holders, especially with the number of ministers that have been suspended for or linked with fraudulent activities. Gilbert Musa from Festa says, good morning. On the idea of data information exchange, it's a welcome and a long-expected initiative. What puzzles me is the complexity currently at play in federal government institutions when you want to retrieve a document that you misplaced or is missing. The whole process is complicated. Despite the technology in place in recent times, it is shocking that documents are not digitalized till date. Rexy from Surulere says, politics has turned some Nigerians into willing robots. Even when they hear positive news, they find a way to be cynical about it. We can do better. Nigeria will not only get better when your candidate is in Asarok, getting better is a goal, not who is president. I'm not quite sure what you're talking about, Rex.
It's Rexy. Thank you, Rexy.
Rexy. Good morning, big sister Oluwaseun and Chibuzor. I'm only greeting you people. Thank you, Chief Cisco Delgado, for greeting us. And that's it for this morning on Freshly Pressed. Thank you, Chibuzor, for your time.
Thank you very much. It's been lovely. And yes, we are all Nigerians. My disclaimer, I'm not making political statements. I don't have a candidate. At the moment, I only have a president for the next how many years, and there'll be an election afterwards. Maybe then I'll decide on a new candidate. And cynical, Nigeria makes me cynical. I think a lot of Nigerians are cynical.
Well, 8:15, we're going to be having some light-hearted conversation on the grapevine, just stepping it down with some good gist, as we call it over here. So you're welcome to join us on the grapevine from 8:15 till 8:45 on Smooth Breakfast on Smooth 90.1. My name is Oluwaseun.
The headlines, the stories, the news, in-depth analysis.